Hi, I'm Dawn French, Senior Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Community Relations at White Plains Hospital. And I'm also the chair of the 2021 Go Red for Women campaign in Westchester County. I'm excited to share a new initiative from the American Heart Association and White Plains Hospital to help educate the next generation of women about heart disease. It's called Conversations with My Daughter, a video series designed to educate and empower women to be able to positively impact their heart health. For me, the message is all about prevention. While the number of women who die each year from cardiovascular disease is startling, it's important to know that 80% of cardiovascular events can be prevented. And that's where the message to my daughters comes in. This series is designed to provide insightful information and tips on how to talk to your daughters about making smart choices around heart health. There are 5 topics in this video series: nutrition, stress and mindfulness, physical activity, overall heart health, and the dangers of smoking and vaping. I hope you'll find time to watch these videos and use them as a tool to start a conversation with your daughter.
So it's a really good question about the best way to talk to teenagers about healthy eating. And I actually think the first thing that we should do is remember to lead by example and that actions speak louder than words. And it's really hard to talk to a teenager about healthy eating if we're not living that kind of lifestyle. So I always remember one story from one of my patients who said that they were in Disney, and when her daughter ordered lunch, she chose apples on the side rather than French fries on the side. And the mom said to her daughter, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. What made you make that decision?" And her daughter said, "Because I saw you doing it." So I think that the first thing that we can do as a parent, being a good role model for our daughter, is to make good choices on our own because they are watching what we're doing. So that's number one. The second thing is, I think that if we can talk about healthy eating related to the things that your daughter may like to do. And so it's very important that, first, I should say, healthy eating is not overly restrictive eating. There's a condition called orthorexia, which is a fear of eating anything that's unhealthy. So we want to be really careful as parents to talk to our daughters and our teenage daughters in a way that we don't create any fear or anxiety around food. And we want to keep it really positive and really about health. So if your daughter likes to dance or do gymnastics or play a sport, a really good way to talk about healthy eating is to fuel her workout. We talk about, like, a newer saying is strong is the new skinny. Healthy eating isn't about being skinny or keeping weight low. It's about being strong and being active and taking in the right fuel to be able to support the activities that your daughter likes to do. Another thing that I think is an avenue for discussion with teenage girls, especially, is to also maybe talk to your daughter about some of the things that she's seeing online. So more recently, I started to pay more attention to Instagram and to TikTok because I have a teenage daughter, and I noticed the things that she is seeing on there, and some of them are quite worrisome. So there's a lot of people out there that are called influencers that don't have nutrition degrees, that are talking about things nutrition related that are not healthy and not safe. And these can be the messages that our teenage daughters are seeing. So I've started to talk to my daughter about, like, so what kind of things are you seeing online these days about nutrition? And so it's opened up some interesting things. Some are positive. There's some exercise trends, there's some healthy eating trends, but there's also some diet-like things that we want to hear if our daughters are seeing this online. And it also could be a good segue to introduce your daughter to the idea that nutrition it's a healthcare field. And so registered dietitian, which is the degree that I have, is a degree that we are trained to teach people about healthy eating. So another thought is that it's never too young for your daughter to have, like, a nutrition checkup. So I just think, like, we go to the eye doctor for our eyes and the dentist for our teeth. So I think it's important that teenage girls know that there is a profession called registered dietitian, that if they have questions about nutrition, that it's often covered by insurance, and that they can talk to someone to really get the facts about nutrition. But I think starting at home with the family being a good role model is a very important place to start. It's important to start talking about healthy habits and heart health at a young age for a few different reasons. The first reason is that it's been found that actually plaque can start to build in arteries at a younger age. And that's why for many years they have said that after the age of 2 years old, that we don't need to have any full fat in our day, and that it's recommended to switch over to lower fat and fat-free options, because plaque can actually start to build in arteries at a younger age. And so in more recent years, they've also started to test cholesterol at a younger age at the pediatrician. And it's been found that a fair amount of teenagers actually can have high cholesterol. And so this is another important thing, that we don't want to scare our daughters, and this is a fine line. It's important that they have a healthy balance of eating. I always say no one should need to eat 100% perfectly, because that's really like considered an eating disorder. But we can talk to our daughters about like 80% careful, 20% flexibility, with the idea that if they start with not so great eating habits now, it is hard to change over time. So I think all of our daughters will have an easier time down the line if they start with healthier habits at a younger age. But really specifically about heart health, if we are having too much saturated fat, there could be things that happen at this age in terms of like the LDL cholesterol climbing. And another one is triglycerides. That's also related to heart health. So it's been found that, especially in teenagers, if they drink a lot of sugary drinks like Gatorade or Snapple, or like any drinks that have calories and sugar in it, if they drink that in great quantity, there are some teenagers that may be prone to higher triglyceride numbers, which impacts heart health. And even if it causes enough of weight gain, it could even lead to type 2 diabetes at a younger age. And again, that's related to having too many carbohydrates, too much sugar causing weight gain. Those are a little bit of extreme cases, but it's just good for kids to know that they do need to be careful of their heart health. We don't, again, want to scare them that something would happen immediately, but it's really about just forming healthy habits at a young age. The foods that are particularly important for a young adult, and specifically a young female, include foods that have protein and foods that are high in calcium, and making sure that she's getting in enough vitamins and minerals and fiber during the day. So I can give you a rundown of what an average or typical, or even I should say goal day would look like. So breakfast, of course, is important. And I know it's hard with teenagers if they're sleeping until the last minute and then waking up right in time to go to school. Teenagers are known for potentially skipping breakfast. I think it's important to talk to your daughter about having a healthy breakfast as a way to set her up for a really good day ahead. And so a healthy breakfast means that it should have some nutrient density in it. And so one example would be to have some protein at breakfast. So that could be eggs. Eggs are really good for you, and really even related to heart health. It's good to talk about, because people have the notion that eggs might not be good for your heart and that they might raise cholesterol. But it's been found in recent years that it's not the cholesterol in food that raises our cholesterol, it's the saturated fat in food. And so saturated fat, we'll talk further about in a little bit, but is primarily in things like butter and red meat. Eggs have cholesterol in them, but that type of cholesterol does not raise our cholesterol. So starting the day with something like eggs, an omelet with vegetables in it, or even 2 hard-boiled eggs for a quick breakfast on the go. Or another breakfast option could be something like oatmeal, which is high in soluble fiber. So when we talk about heart health, we can talk about the things that we should be avoiding, like saturated fat, but also the things that we should be adding to our day, such as soluble fiber. So oatmeal is a really nice option for soluble fiber. So that could be a good breakfast, maybe with some berries on it. Maybe if your daughter likes like peanut butter or almond butter, she can mix a tablespoon of that into the oatmeal. I often find that when people add a little bit of healthy fat to their food, it helps them to feel full for longer. So that could be a nice breakfast. I think it's also important to talk to teenagers about strategic snacking. So there's a difference between like haphazard snacking, where we're like mindlessly eating out of a bag of chips, compared to strategic snacking, which means depending on how long her day is and if she's going to be in school and then maybe go to a sport, that we want to focus on spacing out the right snacks during the day so that she's able to stay in control of her appetite during the day. And also snacks are a really good way to boost our nutrient intake. So a lot of people don't get enough calcium in their day, and they don't get enough fiber in their day. So snacks could be a really good opportunity to have things like Greek yogurt, which is high in calcium, or a piece of fruit that would be high in fiber, or a bag of nuts like of almonds or pistachios, which would have healthy fat. So I think strategic snacking is an important part of a teenager's day. Lunch could be something like a sandwich on maybe like a whole wheat wrap or tortilla or a pita, with some kind of lean protein like turkey or chicken, or maybe if she likes like smoked salmon or peanut butter. So like a lean protein on some kind of whole grain with some vegetables added to it. So there could be vegetables in the wrap, there could be vegetables on the side. If your daughter likes salads, of course, that could be a great idea, but there should always be some kind of protein on it to make it filling. And then I think for dinners, the more you can get teenagers involved in selecting dinner, whether it's helping you shop or just helping you like look at, if you're shopping online, maybe some ideas for the week, and get involved in making some healthy choices. It's been shown for so many years, the more kids get involved in choosing and preparing food, the more open they're going to be to trying healthy foods. One thing I think that we want to be cautious of is that sometimes people say, well, my kids don't like this, so I stopped making it. And the family goes to like the lowest common denominator, and they just make pasta for everyone because they say, oh, my kids won't eat fish, or my kids don't eat vegetables. And really, if we give into that and we stop making those things, they're never going to eat them. So I think it's really important to continue to offer healthy choices. And for most teenagers, they will eventually come around. The main food that we want to be careful of in terms of heart health is not taking in too much saturated fat. So it's been found that saturated fat is what causes plaque to build in the arteries. And one of the tightest heart health guidelines out there is that we should be limiting our saturated fat to about 12 to 13 grams in the day. And some of the highest sources of saturated fat are things like butter. So 1 tablespoon of butter has about 7 grams of saturated fat, and cheese is high in saturated fat. 1 ounce has about 5 grams, and red meat is high in saturated fat. So whenever you see like the white marbling on meat, that's saturated fat. Something like cheese definitely has some merit for teenagers because, as I was mentioning briefly before, teenage girls need to have enough calcium. There's only a certain number of years that we can add calcium to our bones, and the teenage years are really important to have enough calcium. And so some ways to get some more calcium are a Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, and almond milk is particularly high in calcium, but cheese does offer some. So I think that that can stay in a teenager's diet. But we want to look at the sources of saturated fat that don't really add an additional nutritional benefit. So we want to avoid saturated fat. We want to try to add some soluble fiber. But there's one thing I think that's important to touch upon, and it's the discussion around coconut oil. So in recent years, coconut oil has become like a bit of a trendy thing. And a lot of teenagers hear about it and they think that they should be using it. Coconut oil is actually saturated fat, and there's varied thoughts on it. But to date, I don't think that there's been enough studies that show that coconut oil is safe for us. It is still in the saturated fat category. So I think that if your teenager is seeing anything online about making recipes that have coconut oil or things that are aligned with the keto diet, that the saturated fat intake may be high, and that could potentially raise their cholesterol and therefore not be good for their heart health in the future. I think that the best thing that a parent can do to set their teenage daughter up for future success with healthy eating is to arm her with the right knowledge. So it does mean trying to keep an open communication about this, have a safe food environment at home, but really with an emphasis on enjoying food and enjoying healthy food and spending time around food, going to farmers markets, preparing healthy meals together. But on the flip side, it's also really important that parents do not become the food police. So what I've seen for many years is that parents who are too restrictive with their children's eating when they're home, and really specifically with their daughters eating usually, I find that when they're out on their own, sometimes the reverse happens. And they feel that they've been too restricted at home. And when they're out on their own, they feel like finally I can eat whatever I want. And that's not always a good thing because they don't always make the best choices. And so I think that when when your daughter, your teenage daughter is living at home, you really want to be careful to not be the food police, but instead to just incorporate healthy eating and healthy food preparation into your normal daily routine. Another thing can be to arm your daughter with the right resources. So there's so many websites that have like thousands of healthy recipes, and there's like fun kitchen gadgets for healthy cooking, like air fryers. So to try to make healthy cooking fun and part of what the family does together, so that when she does go off, hopefully to college or out on her own, that she feels comfortable in the kitchen to be able to prepare her own healthy meals. She feels comfortable in the supermarket doing a healthy shop, and that just healthy cooking and living feels comfortable as part of her lifestyle. This pandemic has been an interesting time for teenage girls specifically. I think part of it is social media related. During the pandemic, I see that a lot of people gained weight because they were home and not as active. And maybe they were baking more, they were drinking more alcohol, or all different things. I have seen that during the pandemic, teenage girls specifically, I've had a number of referrals for girls who got too restrictive with their eating. And I think part of it is what's going on social media with people showing their perfect food days, and that teenagers think that they need to eat in a really clean way and that they need to eat perfectly. And so I think that just the message of health, but of a healthy balance, is very important for teenage girls so that they don't end up feeling overly restricted, and that certainly they don't end up with a fear of eating foods that are not necessarily healthy, that we should not need to eat perfectly 100% of the time. So I think the greatest gift to give your daughter is knowing that food should be enjoyable and it should be fun, and that healthy eating feels good, but restrictive eating doesn't feel good. And so there's not a simple answer to it, but it's something that a family can work on together to just find the right balance.